Hello there. Just getting ready. I'm looking for a online tool that creates ASCII diagrams. ASCII flow. Let me see. Oh yeah, I think that's what I want. How do I move stuff though? Okay. Interesting. Trying to make a diagram of my data model so I can visualize what I'm about to change. And I thought I'd just doodle a bit before I really start coding. So this is fun. Maybe it... How do I delete something? Okay. Okay. I should have resized the boxes before I drew the arrows. Oh. So. Right. Alrighty. So I can export it. As a text field. That's cute. Oh, it almost worked. Hey Seslov, how are you doing? Welcome to the stream. Why do I like Ruby? I like Ruby because it's a very clean language. I think it's easy to understand. I think it's easy to see what code does if it's not written too badly, and it's very versatile. In my case, I'm doing 80% system work and 20% web application development, and Ruby is very well suited for both things. We use Chef as our automation system. We run hundreds of Linux systems, hosts, and Chef is doing very well managing all these servers. And Ruby on Rails is a great framework for developing web applications. So I'm pretty happy that I can use the same language for both of these things, and even developing command line tools, small helper scripts and things like that is easy to do in Ruby. So it's more or less an all-round language, and so mastering a single language and doing all these things is of course easier than having, say, Go for system level stuff, and maybe I can't think of a language that's very well used in automation, but yeah, you know what I mean. It's yeah, I really like it. I've learned more than 10 programming languages over the course of the last 30 years, and I've been using more or less Ruby only for the last 10 years, I'd say, and I'm pretty happy about it. Your question is if Python will be enough. Python is more or less, I think, equally suited for these things. So if you prefer writing your code in Python, I think you'll be perfectly okay. Okay, so let me get this diagram at least screenshotted. Yeah, no worries. If you have any further questions, please go ahead. Okay, I guess I'm now ready and warmed up, so let's start this thing officially. Hello DevOps people, welcome to Full Stack Live, my live coding stream, where I do all kinds of DevOpsy stuff. Happy to have you here, and I hope you're good. I'm pretty well. My family just left. They, of all things, went to the beach, and I think they are actually going to take a dip in the sea. And mind you, we're talking the Irish Sea, so it's not like we are here on Ibiza or something. But the kids have their swimsuits with them, and their neoprene stuff, and so I guess they're actually going to take a swim. I'm more than happy with that. That leaves the house quiet for me to do my live stream without having to worry that the kids will be killing themselves outside. And so yeah, so the next 1.5 hours I'm going to do a bit of Ruby on Rails coding. I've been working on our hosting dashboard on Thursday night and actually made a bit of progress there, and I'd like to continue with what I left off. As always, this is supposed to be a very interactive thing here, so if there's any feedback you have, if you have any questions about DevOps, software development, when I'm going to go to the hairdresser next, regardless, simply ask away in chat and I'd be happy to answer. So, yeah, I've just been doing a bit of diagramming here in my browser to visualize what I'm going to do. Hey Shoes On, how you doing? Happy to have you here, welcome to Full Stack Live. Why are DevOps paid more than devs? Well, I guess because they have ops as well. No, I'm not sure if you're just kidding. I'm pretty sure there are DevOps people that are paid far less than some developers, especially if we're talking junior versus senior and stuff like that. But yeah, if you're actually doing both, as I do, I guess you have a bit more responsibility, and a business that's clever pays people according to the responsibility they have and fulfill, of course. Well, yeah, this is the old data model we have in our hosting dashboard, and I'm not too happy with it, even though I've designed it back 5 years ago or something like that. The reason is this data model was based on how we modeled things in our system automation system, in our system configuration system in Chef, basically. QP, welcome back. Hope you're doing great. Yeah, so we started without a user interface. We didn't have any dashboard. We simply created the hosting infrastructure for our customers on demand, and every change had to be done via a support ticket. And we did that for more than 2 years, I think. It worked well because we don't have too many customers. We are not a very we're not a mass hosting provider. We are more of a boutique shop that works with web agencies that do a lot of web projects, and so it didn't matter too much that we didn't have a UI back then. But since then we've grown, of course, and now the user model needs to be more, well, user-centric, because permissions, especially for people who work in multiple projects that are connected to different customers, really have a problem with our current state of data model. Because as you can see, a company has users, and a company has one or more hosting clusters, and these hosting clusters, of course, run a bunch of websites. So in order to determine who has access to which website, we go from the website to the cluster, to the company, and then down to the set of users this company has. And yes, that's where it ends. So if we have a user that's assigned to a different company, there is no way for this user to access any of these websites here. At the moment, we are asking our customers to create new user accounts associated with another company. So for example, if it's another customer of theirs, so they have to create a new email address and stuff, so they can actually be part of the user set of that company and then get access to these websites, which is of course far too annoying. And so that's what I'm about to change, because I've extended our data model with a new association that's called website user roles. And a website user role belongs to a certain user, and it belongs to a certain website. And that allows arbitrary connections between users and websites, regardless of the company a user is associated with. So that's the current state of affairs in the application. I've added the necessary models and tables and stuff. And on Thursday, I added code that creates this association for newly created websites. So if a user creates a new website, the user automatically gets associated with the website as the website's owner. This association, as the term roles here points out, is so this allows us to differentiate between different access levels, and the user who creates a website automatically becomes the website's owner. Period. That's very standard, and what I'd like to do today is populate this website user roles model more, because of course we have a lot of existing websites that don't have any user associated directly, either as an owner or as a collaborator, and I'd like to change that today. That's the plan for today. And now I'll have to think how this is going to work. So what should be the trigger for a user getting associated with an existing website? First idea that comes to mind is any user who modifies a website because they are part of the company automatically gets associated with that website as a collaborator. Because obviously they are. If they make a change to a website, they add a domain name or create a database or something like that, they should be regarded a collaborator and get their website user role. So any change that's made to a website or to one of the auxiliary models below website that I haven't painted in yet. For example, we have things like domains. It's actually called, what is it called? It's called an aux domain, auxiliary domain. So a website has a main domain as a native attribute, and there are as many aux domains as there need to be. And there's, for example, also databases which have their own sub models again. So this is far from complete here. But yeah, I think that's it's enough to understand how this works. And the question is, where do I hook in to see that something that affects a website has been changed? For example, if someone adds an aux domain, someone adds a database. Maybe I should use a different name here. That's not the model name. Oh, I could simply have used the eraser. So what I meant is aux domain. I've been using class names after all. Yeah, so if someone adds a database, the website needs to be or needs to be checked if this user already has a affiliation with that website. And so far there's only a single section of code that connects these things already. But I don't think that's the right place to hook this in. Interesting question. But let's leave this question simmering for a bit, because I just remembered that I still have a merge request from Thursday that I need to merge. So I'm going to do that first, which is this one here, create websites with an owner. That merge request hasn't been merged yet, and that's what I'm going to do exactly now. So let's take a look at this pipeline. That will run our tests again and then deploy my code to staging. And then I'll try and check if this works. And if it works, we can deploy to production as well. And while this is chugging along, let's think about how we can trigger something in the website model if one of these sub-models of website gets changed. That's interesting. It's a bit of a surprise to me, but it looks like I'll need to generalize some code that I already have. That's what I was referring to earlier. We already have some code, and I've created this as a concern named chef storable, and this concern is mixed into all the models that have to do with website. So it's website itself and all its submodels. And this chef storable concern hooks into the create, update, and destroy events of a model. And if that one of these is triggered, it basically triggers a chef save or chef delete, which means the method chef save gets called, and chef save itself checks if the model has an actual chef data bag assigned, which is a data store in our configuration management. If that's the case, it gets exported asynchronously in this job. Else, it calls its chef parent's chef save method, which means that, for example, if someone changes a domain model instance, the domain's chef save method will be called, but the domain itself hasn't a data bag in chef, so it calls its parent's chef save, and the parent of all these models is always website. So in the end, website's chef save gets called, and website has a data bag, and then it gets exported to Chef with all the data from its submodels, with all the domains and databases. This creates a huge JSON document that contains everything that there is to know about a website. And that's the initial data model I was referring to earlier when I talked about our whole schema. Having this huge JSON blob wasn't the best blueprint for this data model, and that's why I'll have to change this year. Okay, so I guess the same mechanism goes for what I'm going to do now. If any of these models that are connected to website gets changed, it needs to bubble up to website, and website then has to check if the current user is already associated with that website or not, and if it's not the case, then it should create the association. So I could split this up. Into two different things. Chef Storable still will concern itself with the export, especially with this Chef Save data bag item job. But the whole the hooks here should become a bit more generic. And take care of the bubbling. So we'd get another concern. I haven't decided, or I haven't found a good name for it yet, but this new concern will take care of basically marking models as dirty and bubbling this up to the parent models until it gets to the root, and the root then will do what's necessary. For example, trigger a Chef Save or trigger a user association. And here I was thinking, oh, this will be easy, this will not be complicated, I'll just sprinkle in a few create statements. How am I going to call this? These concerns are all called something able. So what is it? What's the adjective here? We're talking about a tree structure or a parent-child relationship or something like that. And see, issues on that's where devs should be paid more than ops people, because devs have to think about these complex computer science-y things, while ops people only reboot Linux servers. Let's dip our toes in this a bit by trying to split this up, and maybe the name will become apparent then. So again, there is no duplicate. I need to look for a VS Code extension that can duplicate files. Anyhow, let's create a new file, and we'll call it somethingable.rb, and we'll copy everything that's in here and paste it. And somethingable is... Oh, wait. I'll need to do a bit of housekeeping first. This merge has passed its deployment, which will allow me to test this change later, but now I'm going to go to the user-centric world milestone and add another issue here. How am I going to do this? So far GitLab had a button everywhere I needed it, but in this case there is no create new issue for this milestone button, is there? No, well, there is. GitLab never disappoints. Populate website user role when changes happen. Whenever someone changes a website or related model, we check if the user is already associated with the website. If not, they get added as a collaborator. So this will make sure that our websites get lots of collaborators, even though only new websites will have an owner. So eventually someone has to be promoted from collaborator to owner if that becomes necessary. But that won't be necessary until we connect permissions or things like that to this relationship. I'll assign it to me. It's automatically assigned to the milestone user-centric world. It's still very much a data thing. It won't show in the UI at all. It just happens in the background and in the database. So I guess I can submit this. And let's hop to the milestone and grab this issue. Oh, it's already ongoing. Brilliant. Okay. So it's issue number 503, and that's why I'm hopping into master, pulling my latest changes, and also deleting my local branch 483. That's the one deleted earlier, yep. And now I'll create a new one, 503. Website user role populate. All right, now I can make changes and commit them or revert them as alike. So my relationship concern here will take care of the hooks. We won't need a data bag, that's chef specific. We'll have a method called something parent that points to an instance of a model that is the parent model. We don't have a data bag in this context, and this is not about chef save anymore, but that's something changed when this changes. If it has a parent, no, if it has a parent, yeah, then I'll call it its parents something change method. And if it doesn't have a parent, we are at the root of the tree, and then we'll call these something change handler. Well, more or less this is the something change handler, isn't it? So it's something like this. We have the change handler that gets called for each and every of these events. So we call these something change handler. Maybe even the something create handler and stuff like that. Let's not make it too complex. But here we need to call the something delete handler, I guess. Chef stuff goes away. So we have the something change handler and the something delete handler. And then again we'll call the parents something delete handler, or else we call something delete execute. Well, I guess if we already have 2 of 3 events modeled here, we call this the update handler. And then we'll Do the same with create here. And has parent is not something parent nil, and since we are in Rails we could simply say it's an alias has parent to, no, we can't alias it, we'll have to define it. Has parent is equivalent to something parent present. So that's what I meant with managing the bubbling up in this tree relationship. And yes, QP naming is always fun. Naming, cache invalidation, and talking to product people, the three hardest things in computer science. Okay, that's that. And the chef storable won't have to take care of that stuff anymore, so we can get rid of this. We don't have to model this parent-child relationship anymore. And chef save becomes much easier, simpler, because it doesn't have to deal with parent-child stuff. It can go directly and create a job. Because we're not going to call it for child models anymore. Instead, we'll simply use our new concern let's take care of this down here, where we actually say this is the something create execute method. And we'll call chef save from here. Same goes for the something update execute. And for the something delete execute, we'll call chef delete. So using our new concern, we'll trigger what's left of our old chef storable concern. And we'll define this only for a website, which means that we'll have to define this for the concern as well, but keep it empty. So the something create execute stays empty, something update execute stays empty, and the something delete execute stays empty as well. And I guess instead of execute, that's actually the handler. And that's more like the well, yeah, you could argue about that. It's these events, after all, that create or that trigger the handler. I'm not happy about the execute though. So we can assign this to all the models that are interconnected with the website, and they all trigger these event handlers, but all apart from website simply call their parents handlers. And website itself needs to redefine these methods here because it doesn't have any parent. And then we'll get to use these remaining things here. I like it. I like it. Just need to find some proper names. Huh. So how do we call this? Connectable? Because domain and database and SSH keys are connected to a website. On the other hand, maybe I'd like to convey that this is a parent-child relationship. So maybe it's a parentable concern. Folks, I'm really open for suggestions here. Treeable. At the moment we are only one level deep, so there's website, and then below website there's databases and SSH keys and domains and stuff. It doesn't go deeper than that. Theoretically it could from this code. What's a good word that describes that we are building a tree structure here? Graphable? It's not a word, but we're talking about a directed graph here. Let's take a look at graph theory and the words they use. So they're connected by vertices. No, the vertices are the nodes. I'm talking about nodes in a tree and edges that connect them. Refer to the glossary of graph theory for basic definitions. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Arborescence, what a great word. I propose arborifiable as the concern name. Because arborify would be the word for making things into a tree. Yeah, I think I like that. Bramble. That's so sweet. There are so many great words in graph theory. Well, we are only at C here. I'm not sure if this is going to take more time. Let's scroll a bit quicker here. Yes, in the end it's about recursion, because if someone changes, say, a domain, this needs to recurse into the parent model, which is website, and then gets then it triggers the saving or the export of the website. Well, it's a very simple tree, just like this part here, website branches out into domains, databases, SSH keys, and whatever is connected to website too. But you're right, we're talking about recursion. Because a change to a domain itself doesn't directly trigger the association with a certain user, because we don't associate domains with users. It needs to trigger the website's association with the user. So we're also talking about predecessors or successors. Ear decomposition, that sounds icky. Is there any term related to recursion that we could use? So it's mostly about saying that a model is a child model and can't handle a change by itself, but needs to delegate this change to the parent, which in our case then handles it, but theoretically could delegate even further. Delegation is another term that fits here. But I associate passing things down with delegation, and in our case we are passing things up. That's probably a perfectly suitable word, but as a non-native speaker, I simply can't think of any. And I'm really not that deeply steeped in graph theory that I would identify the fitting term right away. We're also talking about transitive changes. Change to a submodel then triggers a change in the parent model. There must be a word that fits here. something like delegatable. So we'd call this delegation change handler. Oh, that's actually delegation create handler and the delegation update handler. And we're talking about delegation parent as delegation parent. Yes, exactly. In the actual class, I'll then define who the delegation parent is, and the parent then needs to have these handlers, or rather the executors defined that are defined below, that we are calling here. So delegation. I'm very inclined to call this the handler, because it sounds more natural, I think. At least I find it making more sense. So that's the delegation create handler, and we'll call this the delegation create event something. A trigger? Yeah. That's the delegation create trigger, of which we call oh, you mean basically protecting this like a base class, so the abstract methods can't be called. Yeah, you're right. If I miss to implement this, then I get an exception. Yep, that's clean. Good. Okay, so I call this trigger. It's not 100% clean, I think, but it's the best I can come up with it now. This is the trigger. Call the parents trigger, or call your own handler, and then here it's the same. It's the delegation update trigger, or the delegation update handler. And finally, for delete, it's the same thing. Delegation delete trigger, or delete handler. And then we'll define these handlers, and instead of making them empty methods, we'll raise a not implemented error. And it's not the something create handler, it's the delegation create handler. That's actually quite nice. Makes sense, easily readable. There is still something that I need to replace. Oops. And here. Now I'm not sure if parent is still a good idea. We could be even more generic here, because we're not only talking about tree-like structures, we could even do sideways delegation if we model it correctly. So it's actually just about delegation and not about levels in a tree. But since this is going to work, and we can rename that anytime later by ways of refactoring, that's okay. And of course we'll have to rename this now to delegatable. Is there an E in that word? Delegatable. Delegible. Huh. Things you learn. Delegible. Capable of being delegated. Delegible. I like it. Delegible. So, that means we can change website to delegation create handler, delegation update handler, and the delegation delete handler. These are the actual implementations of this interface. And it's delegible. As are all the sub models, and I'll find them by simply looking for chef storable. We can replace this, because actually only website is chef storable. This models reality now more precisely, even because up until now I had all of them chef storable, even though only one of them actually is storable in Chef, which is website, and all the others only were Chef storable because I had to manage the delegation. And now that these are separate concerns, things get even more readable now. Only website itself is delegible and Chef storable. So Redis service is only delegible. Delegible. Nope, it's an actual L. And it just needs to define the delegation parent. And that's it. And then database is delegible. And it's the delegation parent method. And it's always the website attribute that points to the belongs to association. Database aux domain is delegible. And SSH key. Oops. Okay, and I'll run my tests. Everything should still work. This is just a refactoring so far. Yeah, I agree. Delegation parent, the parent term in there is very surprising, because no one talks about a hierarchy or a parent-child relationship in the context of delegation. It's more the delegation partner, or the yeah, it's actually delegee, but that's a, I don't like the word. It's like mentee and yeah. But it's correct, I guess. Or it's delegate, actually, isn't it? A person authorized to act as representative for another. So in this context, the website is representative for the domain, the database. So it's actually the delegate. Wait. To authorize someone to be a delegate. Yeah, so the website would be the delegate of the domain. The domain says, well, I've been updated, but someone else has to take care of making sure I get exported to the system management, or that the user that just changed me gets stored as a collaborator. So it's actually the delegate. So, oh yeah, it does make sense. So it's actually delegate and has a delegate. And then we call delegation create trigger. Makes it even more readable. So website doesn't have any delegates, but it has the delegation handlers and the others, starting with Redis service. define website as their delegate. Okay. Let's see. Oof. Of course, I'll have to run it in my Docker container. Quite happy about this session so far. I love code that just makes sense, that you can read and that you can understand because someone chose proper words to explain things. I did not define the handlers in the... I don't have to define handlers in the delegees because they don't handle anything. They simply delegate handling changes to their delegate, and so it ends up everything gets thrown at website, and only website needs to implement the handlers. That's what I meant. That's now become more clear with the chef storable as well, because these submodels aren't chef storable anymore because they simply aren't. They delegate that, and so it has become much clearer now. And chef parent can be removed from website. Actually, that's very kind of you, Rails best practices. Because there is no chef parent anymore, and there's not even a delegate. So I don't even have to rename that. I'll simply leave it off, and the concern automatically defines the delegate as nil, and so has delegate is false, and therefore there won't be any delegation. It actually has to call its handlers. It's very much recursion and relationship modeling, but I like it because it's very clear and concise. And that's what I like these Rails concerns for, being able to define these mix-ins easily and simply include them, and be able to connect things with that way is nice. I know that people have their concerns about concerns, but in this case I really don't see any issues. I was about to say that I'm going to be very disappointed if any of my tests break, but I just realized that I might actually be using some of the implementation details in my tests that will now break. But I guess this will only point out where I have flaws in my design, or especially in my tests, because I should be testing for behavior and not for implementation. Well, yeah, I actually don't know the exact difference between concerns and pure models, because I just do these mix-ins and include them in my classes. I'm actually not sure what the special thing in concerns is, except that concerns have these hooks. Maybe that's what makes them special, but I'll have to read up what Rails exactly had in mind when they added the concerns. So we have 4 errors because yeah, our submodels don't define a shift data bag anymore because it's nil anyway, and we shouldn't test for it to be there. Good. And I just realized we don't have any tests for our delegation concern. So we'll have to add that. Let's go to spec models, shared examples for shift storable. So I like what I see here, because this test simply runs an update on an instance and looks if chef save has been called, but it doesn't check how it got to call chef save. So these tests should actually work. And just where do we actually chef data bank? We call it in line 40. Oh, here we go. Okay, so here we check if there is a chef data bag present. That's strange because there should still be a chef data bag. Oh no! Huh, okay. That's where I'm differentiating between the delegate classes and a delegate model and its children. And this isn't the case anymore. However, well, we can simply throw out the stuff that's basically the stuff that needs to be checked in our delegation tests. And I can remove these shared examples from all but the website model. So in this case, chef save creates an export job and does not create an export job for stuff. That's that. And just as we remove the include from all our models, we'll now have to remove the tests from these models. So this will not behave like chef storable anymore, and this will not behave like chef storable anymore. And this will not behave like chef storable anymore. And finally, this will not behave like chef storable anymore. Only website still will behave like chef storable. Where's the behave? Oops. Okay, it's down here in chef integration. Fine. So let's run our tests again. QP, can you tell me what's special about concerns compared with normal Ruby modules? Because I guess I'm only using my concerns as pure modules. And I don't actually do anything very Railsy with them. How are we for time? Yep, I'm about to reach my window. But it looks like I'll be able to wrap this up nice and neat. Oops. Verified doubles, I threw that away. That's in chef storable shared. Okay. I'll have to add the tests. I'm not going to do this today. And of course I'll have to implement the user association. So yeah, we are not finished with our current issue yet. Oh. Crap. Well, yeah, okay. Okay, that's the exception that I had to make for databases. It had me stumped a few weeks ago. Let's see, that's in Services, Website Database Manager, where I'm explicitly calling chef save. And I'll now have to call the delegation, in this case create handler. So the database is the only instance where delegation doesn't quite work in terms of chef export. Normally, create database here will trigger the create event, which will then trigger the export. However, a database won't be included in the export unless it also has an owner. So after creating the owner connected to the database, I have then to explicitly call the delegation create handler a second time. And what else is broken here? It's all about the database stuff here, I guess. Yep. So I guess this should actually fix things. This has become a bit more confusing here. Before I explicitly called chef save because that's what it's about. Now I have to trigger the create handler again because only a database with an owner is a valid entity that should trigger the create handler. Alternatively, I could make a few changes that actually creating the owner will trigger the delegation. And no, that's not possible because one owner can have multiple databases and then I don't know which website is affected. And I don't want to trigger the handlers for each and every website just to hit the single one that it's all about in this context. Still failures here. Oh, of course, I can't call database create handler. I'll have to call the trigger. I realized that because before I saw the error messages. That's certainly... Okay, yeah, here we call the not implemented error. See, that's where the exceptions come in handy. Thanks, QP. And yeah, I do like the trigger term here, actually, because yeah, we created something, and now after creating the owner, we have to create to trigger the create handler of the database, or the that does make sense. Okay, that's a few less Fs now. It's about dinner time. Yes, I like this. I really like this. Okay. So let's commit this and wrap this whole session up. Refactor. Let's not. Split up delegation and or split up shift export and related model delegation. For populating the website user roles. Oh, whoop. Actually, populating the website user roles is the second use case for the delegation mechanism we've built for exporting we've built into Chef Storable. So this change extracts it into its own delegible concern. And so we'll go ahead and extract delegation from Chef Storable. Nice. So we've started with the refactoring, and next time we're going to implement the actual creation of website user roles, that shouldn't be a problem anymore, and also add tests for the delegible concern, which shouldn't be a problem either. And I think that's a good time to wrap the stream up. So, as always, if you don't follow the stream yet, please hit the follow button, so you get notified whenever I start a new stream, which normally is on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Irish time and Saturdays at 5 p.m. I might do spontaneous streams from time to time if I'm in the mood. So hit that follow button. I'll also export the VOD to YouTube, where it gets conserved for longer than the 2 weeks Twitch gives me. And you'll find the recordings of my streams at youtube.fullstacksensei.com. And you can also follow my Twitter account at Chiwiz, where I mostly announce streams as well. And sometimes I tweet more or less sensible things. That's it for the usual stuff, and I hope you had a good time. I did have a very good time, and I'm very happy with the result of this session. I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for watching, and take care.